faster, healthier, better.
Hi, Alex. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you prefer Alex, Alexandra?
I usually go by Ria.
Or that? Ria? I like
Totally
that.
out of the blue, eh?
It is out of the blue. So a mutual friend, Sean, told me a little bit about your story. And he's like, you need to have her on. She's super inspiring. And she has just a lot of great things to say. And I was like, okay. So we reached out to you. So we went back and forth a couple times. So I appreciate you coming up to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for being so accommodating with times, because we're not always down here. So it's really nice.
Yeah, it's quite a drive.
it's a bit of a hike.
Just a bit. Okay, so you wanted to drink scotch, which I appreciate. So I am going to pour all of us a little bit of scotch. But how do you know Sean?
Okay, so I used to work for victim services.
Okay.
And when I worked for victim services, I would work with members in gangs that would end up in Northern Ontario for various reasons, whether it was moving drugs or girls that were being trafficked. I would just meet up with these people through victim services, and I was looking for ways, because they were from Toronto, and the way victim services work, you have to be a victim of something. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of these kids that we were getting weren't necessarily willing to come forward because there was a fear. Mm-hmm. How are we ever going to, I can't just tell you what's going on mm-hmm. without repercussions. Mm-hmm. So then I made it my mission to find a way to help these kids and get victim services to help them. Because victim services has access to funds through the government, through VQRP, mm-hmm. to pay for things like flights, hotel accommodations, food, human trafficking. They have funds to pay for so much, like tattoo removal and addictions and just so many things. Mm-hmm. So I went on LinkedIn and I met Sean's boss, Jason, mm-hmm. and I reached out to him and said, hey, I have a person, I need help. What do you guys do? Tell me what you do. Mm-hmm. And so through that, I was able to assist several people getting back into Toronto. Mm-hmm. And that's how that started. Was originally they had no idea what I had personally been through or why mm-hmm. I was so intense about helping people.
I mean, that's good though.
I was so driven. Yeah. And yeah, his team helped some of the kids that I was finding, or even up in Northern Ontario, the police services were finding up there. We'd be able to connect them with the service that Sean provides and his team, and kind of get them working on getting out of the gang life. Mm-hmm.
Well, cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Okay. I've never tried this, so. Mm. Oof, that's dangerous. That's nice. It's pretty good, guys. Oh, Ryan doesn't like it.
Oh, Ryan.
I bought it too.
Your face, though. That's a.
Your face, though. You can't change that.
You can maybe not be so violent about it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's. I think this is fine. This way. This way? Jeez.
Do you want it back?
Sorry. There you go. She knows. So let's go through what you've been through.
Okay.
So let's start from the beginning.
Okay. So I like to start by telling everyone that I grew up in a upper middle class home. My parents to this day are still married, although I don't know how some days, they are so wild. I love them. I have one brother. He's approximately 2 years older than me. We had Sunday night dinners every day. My mom always had dinner on the table for us. My brother played hockey. I rode horses. We lived this amazing life. My primary goal in life was to become this Olympic horseback rider. Mm-hmm. My parents invested everything they had into making this dream come true. So I was at a barn 7 days a week, riding horses from 6 a.m. until 3:00 in the afternoon, and then barn chores and all the stuff that goes along with it. From the time I was probably like 6, 7, that was my life outside of school. So that became my identity, was horseback riding. And I was competitive. I was two levels away from the Olympic dressage level when my career ended abruptly. The barn that I was riding at, my coach was like a second mother to me. And she went away for a weekend and she came back, and I don't know what had changed, but I was actually kicked out of her barn. And she just dropped me as a student. And I think it was the summer I was going into grade 9 that this happened. And when that happened, I lost my entire identity. Because all I knew was horseback riding. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I wanted to be. This lady was like my second mother. This barn was my family, essentially. And when she kicked me out, I lost everything. Especially going into high school, I just had no idea who I was. So at that point, I started smoking cigarettes. I started smoking marijuana. I started drinking. And that's how my high school career started. I used to get in fights. I got kicked out of my first high school in grade 10 for fighting. And I moved to a different high school. When I was 15, I was drinking heavily. Quite often, I wouldn't show up to classes sober. And I was hanging out with the rough crowd. I ended up going to a party one night, and I was actually, it was supposed to be with my friends. And who I thought were friends ended up sexually assaulting me. There was multiple people. And that was like my first sexual experience. So I got my mom to pick me up the next morning. And I just knew something was wrong, but I had no memory of what had happened. I just felt so different. So when I got home, my mom's like, do you want to go to the hospital? I said, no, I just want to go home. So we went home. When I went to the bathroom, I sat down and there was just blood everywhere. And I was like, yeah, okay, I gotta go to the hospital. Went to the hospital. I had the sexual assault kit done. And I also was tested for what I could have been roofied with, and there's so many different combinations. There was like 3,000 and probably more today with just the drugs available. So there's never really going to be a way to tell like what I was roofied with. It was just known that I was roofied and there was trauma. So I went to the police to press charges. And although it wasn't their intent, they terrified me. Now that I'm older, I understand what they were doing. But at the time, I got put into this little like dark, dank room. I was alone. And I just had an officer sitting across from me, and he said, you know, if we find out you're lying, you can be charged. I was like, well, I can't remember. And that's all I had. So I did not proceed with charges. I ended up having to go back to school and live with that. Now, on top of not being able to ride my horses, which was my outlet for so many years and who I was also terrified. I was hurt. I was scared. And in a small town, I would get things thrown at me like you can't rape the willing, things like that. So that was my life. I ended up meeting my daughter's father not too long after that. I think maybe a year or so after that. And well, I guess it was a couple of years after that. And I got pregnant right away when I just turned 18-ish. And I got pregnant fairly shortly after that. Unbeknownst to me, he had a severe addiction to cocaine and oxys and things like that. Because that's not the life I grew up in. That's not anything that I actually knew the signs of. So I think I was 8 or 9 months pregnant when it finally came out. And I had some drug dealers show up at my door, and they wanted their money, and it was just this horrible thing. And I was like, what is happening with my life? And so I tried to stay with him, tried to make it work. He was very emotionally, financially, and verbally abusive towards me. Physically occasionally, but not, and this sounds horrible when I say it, but not as horrific as I got used to down the line. So I ended up leaving him when my daughter was 1. And he chose to not really be a part of his life because of his addiction. So I never really heard from him again until very recently, a couple of years ago. She now talks to him. But so I was now raising my daughter alone with my parents' help, of course. I ended up trying to go back to school. So I wanted to become a police officer. I was working 3 or 4 jobs at the time. And one of the requirements for police foundations is that I would have some job experience. So I ended up getting a job at a security company in the GTA that did work in clubs, whether it was just security for the club or we did private security for artists coming into Toronto and different things like that. And the owner of the club and myself got very close. And then we ended up dating. And when we started dating, he showered me with compliments. He made me feel worth something, which I hadn't felt in a very long time because Rihanna's father was very abusive. I was dumb, I was stupid, I was fat. I was all the things that you hear people call
Other people.
other people in those types of situations. So when I met the owner of the security company, and he just showered me with compliments and made me feel brilliant. He was so proud of me for going to school and trying to better my life and raise my daughter on my own. And he made me feel like I was worth something. And all I had ever wanted was to just find somebody that would love me for me. So we dated for about a year. And over the course of the year, he got to know my family. He got to come up to the farm because my parents own a farm. He learned every single thing about somebody that you would normally learn in the course of a year. Over the course of that year, he also had some things that were now huge red flags, but at the time I didn't really see
It's always 2020, right?
Yeah. So things like if my nails weren't perfectly done, I wasn't allowed to go out with him. If I wasn't dressed perfectly, I wasn't allowed to go out with him. If my hair wasn't done, I wasn't allowed to go out with him. If I was late, I wasn't going anywhere. Like his saying was perfectly on or perfectly off for nails. No chipping.
It's a tongue twister also, but yeah.
Yeah, I can say it in my sleep now. So, yeah, over the course of that year, it was, now looking back, I was being groomed. But at that time, to me, it was just, he wants me to do better. He wants me to be better for myself and for him. Weird things would happen, but I put all my faith in him and all my trust in him in a very short time period. So, for example, within the first probably, 2 to 4 months, I would say, we were driving, and we were driving from, I want to say Pickering to Oshawa. And if you know Pickering to Oshawa at all, it was, we were driving on not the 401, so there's all these lights. And it was about 2 a.m. We were coming home from some security thing we were doing, and he was like, drive through all the red lights. I drove through every single red light. Like, what a twit. Who does that? I did, because I put all my faith in him. I thought, if he wants me to drive through every red light and that's all he wants to do, he's given me so much. Why can't I just do this for him? That was my mentality.
Do you think that he was like testing you to see how responsive you are to him? And
yeah. So other little things, like he wouldn't stay at my house. We were together all the time, but I had never really been to his house. Like, there was weird things that kind of should have been huge red flags, and just I didn't pay attention to them because of the attention he was showering me with. So we're about a year in, and he now knows my family. He knows my family farm. Like, I'd brought his friends up to the farm because they just wanted to check it out and see what a farm was like. They're all these city boys.
Yeah.
That's what we called them. So we're about a year in, and we picked up an artist that had just flown in from Jamaica, and she was doing like some sort of concert or something in, I can never remember, Hamilton or London, whatever it was. And so she was in the back of the van with us. He was driving. I'm in the passenger seat. He gets pulled over and the cop gives him a ticket. And the name on the ticket was not the name that I had known him by.
Oh no.
So I'm looking at this ticket and I'm like,
was he like kind of put the ticket away, or like he didn't care if you saw it or not?
He gave it to me because he really didn't have a choice. And I don't think he thought I would look at it. Mm-hmm. So I just I looked at the ticket and I looked at him and he just gave me this look like, don't you dare say anything. And I was like, oh, okay. Because he had never really been like that with me. Mm. So we got to the hotel, and that night I said, what's going on? Yeah. Who are you? Because it wasn't even like it was a short form of the name he had given me. Like the first and last name were nothing alike. Mm-hmm. So I was looking, when I looked at the ticket, I was just like super shocked. So I asked him about it, and that was the first time I've ever questioned him on anything. Mm-hmm. And that night he assaulted me for the first time so bad mm-hmm. that there was blood on the ceiling. There was blood on the walls. There was blood that, like, the duvet cover was essentially just blood. Mm-hmm. I was unrecognizable. He broke most of my ribs. My face was just destroyed. I had bruises like in my ears. Mm-hmm. He physically assaulted me for so long that he knocked me unconscious. And when I came to, he was still physically assaulting me. I have no idea how long it went on for. Mm-hmm. I couldn't see. When I woke up in the morning, he laughed and said that I had taken a man's beating. Mm-hmm. I wasn't allowed out of the room because there was no way to explain what had happened. Mm-hmm. I know that people that were around him either knew more about him than I did at that time and were just scared, mm-hmm. or didn't want to get involved for mm-hmm. whatever reason. But there were people that came in and did help clean up the mess that was our room. Mm-hmm. So that was the Friday night that happened. Now we have to make it through until I think it was Saturday or Sunday. So yeah, it would be the Sunday morning. So I'm stuck in this hotel room. I can't see. I can't drive. I can't do anything. I physically can't really move. Mm-hmm. And now I'm relying on him to take care of me mm-hmm. because what else am I supposed to do? So he was the one that actually went out and got me ice. He got me painkillers. He took care of me. He got me food. And so by Sunday, when I'm going home and he's saying, I'm really sorry, like this will never happen again. I don't know what came over me. He's telling me all these things. And all I have to go on is the last year that it was like the best year of my life. Mm-hmm. So I stayed with him. And it was a couple months later where I got physically assaulted again. I can't even remember what it was.
From him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was then, like in that time period though, that I realized that he wasn't who he said he was. He was actually the member of a gang in Toronto. He was a drug dealer, and I had been groomed for that entire first year to be like a mule, essentially. So over the course of the next couple of years, I was used to transport drugs around the GTA. I would pull up to a location, they would load my trunk, I'd drop it off somewhere else. It wasn't very often that I did small jobs, but that was my primary, my life for a couple of years. And I did fight it as best I could, but he knew my family. He knew my daughter. The threat against my daughter was continuous. Mm-hmm. The threat against my parents was continuous. There was a plan because I had taken him and his friends up thinking they were just city slickers.
But they were really just casing the place?
Mm-hmm. So there was a plan to take over my parents' farm and use it as a grow op, which was quite elaborate and quite, honestly, brilliant for what it was. I know people don't want to hear that side of it, but these guys they don't get where they are, and they don't make the money that they make being stupid. Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is with a lot of people, like with mafia or mobs or gangs, despite them doing horrendous and disgusting things, they are entrepreneurs. They have to think outside the box, right? And it's crazy how intricate it can be.
And nobody ever wants to talk about that side of it. Nobody ever wants to say like.
Well, because I guess in a sense, when you say that, it's almost like you're like you know, when people talk about who's that Cuban Escobar? Yeah. Right. Awful person. Yeah. Quite the entrepreneur, though.
Nobody wants
right?
to.
But people think that you're
giving credit.
Giving credit, right? So it's a thrifty road.
No.
Right.
It's acknowledging something that if we don't acknowledge it, like knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. I'm going to acknowledge that there's very savvy businessmen involved in this, mm-hmm. because I feel like if the world knows that it's not just these dumb people walking around falling into this by luck, mm-hmm. they'll understand that no, there's always a plan. There's always this. They don't just pull you in because there's by chance. Mm-hmm. Everything is planned, mm-hmm. and maybe it'll bring awareness, and people will be a little more wise that you're not dealing with idiots. You're dealing with people who have a plan and a very good plan. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go forward, mm-hmm. I want to go back to the beginning a little bit.
Yeah.
Because off air, you said you can ask any, which I think is very brave, by the way. You said you can ask anything you want, but be willing to have the answers. Yeah. Which is it's a very daunting thing to hear. But the first thing, going back, when you were sexually assaulted, with these people, they went to the same high school as you?
No.
No?
No.
Okay, so did you see them again?
Yeah.
And how was that, like, seeing them again?
One of them apologized, and one of them denied it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then there was other people in the house. So there was this kind of friends group, and there was several different high schools mm-hmm. in the town I grew up in. And we all kind of came together as, like, the misfits who had been kicked out of different schools or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the females at the party kind of split after that.
Split because they knew what was about to happen?
And they no longer spoke to each other.
Okay.
Because there was disagreements on what actually happened. There was disagreements on who should have stepped up to help me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then as far as the guys, there was two guys for sure that were involved. And one apologized and one will deny it.
The one that, like, how did that feel to have that apology? Did it feel, were you still numb to it? Like, it doesn't matter? And do you still feel about that today?
I'm a firm believer that you can make mistakes and regret them, mm-hmm. but they stole something from me that I can never get back. Mm-hmm. So that different circumstances, maybe I'd be able to forgive, but I just have to kind of
smile like you're smiling right now about it. Yeah. So you told your mother, mm-hmm. right? How was that?
My mom was just sort of like very, we have to get you to the hospital. Mm-hmm. We need to get you to the hospital. And my dad knew something had happened, but my mom's like, Gary, you can't be in the house right now. Because mm-hmm. I just couldn't control, like I couldn't stop crying. And I couldn't look at my dad. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. I just could not look at my dad. Mm-hmm. So my dad went down to the barn or whatever, and we went to the hospital, and they put you in this like weird, almost rubber room. And it's like it's a mental health room, mm-hmm. but it was the only room available that was away from the crowds of people, considering what had happened to me. They just didn't want me sitting in ER, like crying all over the place. So my mom called my dad from there mm-hmm. and just said, like,
this is what happened.
Yeah. And my dad, I think, carried a lot of guilt for that because he didn't want me to go. Mm-hmm. He had said, like, you shouldn't be going to this party, whatever mm-hmm. dads do. Mm-hmm. And you could never stop me from doing whatever I was going to do. I was always going to do it. So you could either drive me.
Oh, you're fine to drive yourself.
Or I was pushing the four-wheeler 2 kilometers up the road and starting it. Okay. Like, we have options. It just depends on how you want your equipment to return to you. Okay. So I was such a crap kid mm-hmm. That way. So I think my dad carried a lot of guilt, and it was hard to talk to him after that for a long time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, and then another thing that, because when you were talking, I was like, okay, I want to put a pin in that, Mm-hmm. When you were talking to the officer mm-hmm. and you said, if you're lying, like will charge. There will be a charge against you. When he said that, was it more on this? Did he say it like just in the sense of a stern statement, or did he seem more accusatory? Like, I don't believe you.
At the time, I felt like it was accusatory. Looking back, I think it was just, you're about to ruin a couple teenage boys' lives. You better.
If you're, yes.
And so that's why now I can understand where he was coming from, because there's a certain amount of power that you hold when you say a statement like that, and you have the power to ruin somebody's life, in my opinion. And looking back,
for sure, because even if the person is found innocent, right, that still stays on them. People are like, do you remember when he or what, you know what I mean? So you
never get rid of that. So I can understand where the officer was coming from now. But back then, 15, just sitting across from this guy after a sexual assault, had taken like, I don't even know how many pills, because they give you all these pills to make sure you don't get pregnant and you don't get STDs and all this other stuff. Like, there's so much that goes into it. And then trying to articulate, well, all I know is what I have to go on from the hospital. I don't have a memory of it, so I can't tell you that. So at the time it felt accusatory. Looking back afterwards, it wasn't. It was just, you're about to ruin somebody's life if you're lying, so don't do that.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And when you had your daughter, I would imagine it wasn't planned, right?
No. She knows that. Like, she'll laugh too. Like, I'm very open with my
Well, it's funny. So I was a bit of a oopsies myself, and it's funny. I joke around with my mom. I'm like, yeah, we talk about like, oopsies, mistake, and she just looks at me. She's like, sometimes, the biggest oopsies are the best oopsies. I mean, what the hell does that mean?
What does that even mean?
I'm like, okay, mom.
Okay, you have to see that.
Yeah, exactly. What else are you gonna say?
Right?
But so, especially like having a daughter, like, were there like a lot of fears coming, like what to do with her, considering what happened to you, right?
Yeah. So my daughter is probably one of the coolest human beings you could ever meet.
Well, she's a part of you.
Yeah. She's, as far as being able to talk to her, I'm so open with her because of my experiences, especially sexual assault and physical abuse. She's very, very aware that there is not great people in the world, but that doesn't mean that there's not good people in the world. It means don't put yourself in stupid situations where you're going to find out who the bad ones are when you can't defend yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
One thing. Why didn't your father or anything say, no, you're not lying, go through it, just don't let the cop intimidate you to?
At that time, I think we were all kind of at a loss. My dad, like, my parents didn't grow up that way. My parents didn't grow up with this violence. They didn't grow up with a lot of drug use. They didn't grow up with, like, I smoked a lot of marijuana. I stole all their alcohol all the time. Like, they didn't grow up that way. So what I was going through, if I said, I'm not going to the police with this, like, my dad knew there was no hope in hell for him to be able to push me in that direction. So once I said, like, I just can't, he was going to push. And because it was such a weird circumstance, he didn't know whether to force it or not. Like, do you keep pushing, or is that going to be what breaks you? Is that going to be what breaks my daughter? Is me forcing her to go through with this? I never really asked him, but that's knowing my dad, he was trying to navigate it the best that he could. And that was...
Also, you can't imagine, like, you're in that situation, like, everybody always thinks, like, what they'll do, and, like, I'll kill that guy or whatever. But, like, when you're in that position, you don't, like...
What did your brother do?
My brother didn't know for a while. He had moved out. He was out west at that time. So he had actually no real idea that it was going on.
Did you not, like, contact, like, hey, like, how things...
So my brother and I were not close.
Okay.
Are you guys close now?
Yes, very. But at that time, and right up until probably he was, maybe even a couple of years ago, we were not that close. Yeah. So my brother has his own story to tell. But growing up in a small town, my brother's actually gay and he hadn't come out. So he moved away and he I'm so proud of who he is, and I can't even express how proud I am of him. But he didn't come out until he was 25, so we didn't know. Like, I had no idea my brother was gay. My dad didn't. Nobody really knew, and he tried so hard to not be gay that it really caused a rift between him and I, because we just thought each other were assholes, to be honest with you. Like, we just.
But when you're young, siblings, you're like, you're an asshole.
Yeah. But even in high school, growing up, we went to the same high school, and I had friends that thought they were dating him and would come to my house and try and fight me because they thought I was at their boyfriend's house. It's my friggin' brother. I live here. They had no idea. Like, we were that separated that people had no idea that we were brother and sister. We don't look alike. None of our mannerisms are the same. Like, we're just so different. So yeah, picking up the phone and telling my brother that, I probably could have.
Did he know of these people, like of these guys? Like your brother, did he know, like, oh, I knew that person or whatever?
No, he didn't know those ones. My brother started at one high school and finished at that same high school.
Okay.
I was out of the public school system and I had to go into the Catholic school system.
Okay.
So these people were from a different high school plus Catholic school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Ugh.
Ugh.
I mean, you went to Catholic school.
I know.
I feel judged.
No, God, no.
Just kidding.
No judgment.
Just kidding.
So the other question I wanted to ask you was, after that experience, like with this guy that you met, a club promoter, right? He was a club promoter.
The security.
The security guy, yeah.
Yeah. He kind of was a promoter, but he also did like a lot of like in-house security for various clubs, and he also did.
Can you get more ice, please?
And he also wanted to. Or he also did private security.
Okay.
For various artists coming in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the next part that you were explaining was he was grooming you for that year and a bit, right? So what was the next step after that? Because you ran the red light, right? He got the ticket, and then.
So the entire year there was like weird things. He would tell me to go out and get a cell phone. It's like I should have known what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
But he'd be like, "Can you go grab me just like a cheap cell phone?
Mm-hmm.
Set it up for me."
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think back of like things that should have been signs that just I can't remember that year very well, other than like I had to be dressed certain ways. I had to wear certain clothes. I had to do certain things. I always had to present myself. He was very much you're to be seen, not heard. So like if we were around his group of friends, I wasn't really vocal about anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was more sit down, shut up, and look pretty.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
What about your friends? Like, did you?
So that would be a thing. I actually didn't end up.
Like more ice?
Yeah, please. I actually didn't end up having friends at the end of that. I pushed.
What I would imagine that like he would isolate you from people so that you would confide in him and him only.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So I remember going through that, and they would say like something's not right here, and I would go back and talk to him and say like, they're saying meh, whatever, and he would say, well, why are you friends with this person? Tell me the exact reasons why you're friends with this person. And then when he broke it all down, he would manipulate every single thing that I would tell him to be like, they're not for you, they're against you. Mm-hmm. And so by the end of it, the very few friends I did have left weren't there because of me not trying to push them away. They were there because they really wanted to stay. Mm-hmm. Because there wasn't a single person in my life that he hadn't tried to really push out, except for my family. Mm-hmm. And even them, he kind of tried to segregate a little bit. I was
going to ask, like, at that time, were you still talking to your mom and father and your brother? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So the first year, I was super close. I've always been super close with my mom and dad. But after that first year, I started lying all the time. Mm-hmm. I started stealing. I started lying and stealing, and just... You couldn't trust me. You couldn't trust being around me. Sometimes it was out of necessity. Sometimes it was to hide what was going on. Sometimes it was to protect the people around me. Mm-hmm. There was never like a really good reason for it other than self-preservation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did for you like you're a drug mule, right? How did like that conversation start with him? He's like, I need you to take it to here. How was that first conversation?
That's a hard one. I don't have like a lot of huge memories on specific conversations, to be honest with you. But I remember him saying, like, you're gonna go to this location. You're not to get out. You're not to talk to anybody. Pop the trunk. People are gonna put like stuff in it. I never really knew what I was moving. I can always speculate, but I don't know. I just knew it was drugs. And he was like, you're going to drive to this location. You're not going to stop. Things like that. Like, and I think initially there was like little tests to see.
Like what?
So when I said I had moved like small amounts, but not a lot of small amounts, initially it was like small amounts, or he would send me into like name any Popeyes to pick up ephedrine so that he could cut.
Girl, I was thinking Popeye's chicken when you said that, not Popeye supplements. You were thinking of Popeye supplements, right?
I was thinking of Popeye.
I was like, he was asking for a 3-piece on a combo, wasn't he? I was like, crispy chicken.
Really?
Biscuit.
That's what he's getting. That's what he's testing you with. He's going to
Wow.
test his entire livelihood with crispy chicken.
And then when you said ephedrine, I was like, wait a second. Okay. So Popeye supplements. So
I think initially that, now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably how it started. Was he would send me into like a health food store to get ephedrine.
Popeye supplements.
To pick up ephedrine so that he could cut.
And mix it and step on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then.
I guess that makes sense.
And then when I didn't rat him out for like small amounts, then the trust builds.
Oh, he's like, okay, she's not gonna say anything.
Then he would do it in front of me.
Oh, really?
Like cut it in front of me, and then he would be like, hey, take this to so and so. I never really did a lot of small amounts, but I think that was the test to see if I actually A, would do it, and B.
Yeah, I was going to do that. I was going to ask you that.
Not just drive straight to the police station with like a trunk full of blow.
He's like, hey guys, got some for you. So he would make you do some of the drugs, right?
I was never an addict. I have had bouts with alcohol, especially in high school, and specifically after him. But so that was probably one of the reasons why he picked me, was because I was not.
You didn't have addictive tendencies?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think that was probably important in picking me for doing that, so that I would never be into the stash.
Look at that. I just want to take a real quick sec to say thank you to our sponsors. So our sponsors are Neurodose. It's at neurodose.com. What they sell is 1P LSD. It comes in a liquid form. And what I usually use it for is a little bit of energy to get in a creative state. Lasts about 10 to 12 hours. So just to let you guys know, I would suggest to take it like first thing in the morning. Then they have their psilocybin pills. The way I describe that is a little bit of a sprint of creativity. So I use it whenever I'm programming for my clients, if I'm actually teaching a class or training some people. I also use it when I'm reading a book if I'm trying to get like in a deep flow state. So neurodose.ca, get off of 15, get you 15% off. I think you'll like it. Back to the podcast. Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the podcast. I just want to shout out to another one of our sponsors, HERCS Nutrition. They're located in East Gwillimbury. So they're a nutrition store that has a lot of protein, BCAAs, vitamins, greens, and pre-workouts. What I like about them is that they're always trying to change the game and get new products in. So they're always trying to learn and get new things in. I think you guys would appreciate it. Again, it's at East Gwillimbury. When you go in, say get off of 15, get 15% off. Other than that, enjoy the rest of the podcast. So how long did you do that for? Like a year, 2 years?
Probably like 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, because from start to finish, it was probably like 3 years, 3.5 years maybe.
Were you getting paid?
No. That's why I would steal from my parents. Yeah.
Where were you staying?
So my parents had bought a house for my grandmother and my uncle, and then I lived in the basement apartment. Mm-hmm. And this was in Durham region.
Like, did you not ever like what was your job? Like, what did you? Like...
So I worked at Hickory Farms, and I still worked. So okay, when I said I didn't get paid, I totally just lied to you. I just didn't get paid for that. So
Would you like another one, by the way? Okay.
So I still did the security.
Yeah.
So I would still be in the clubs until like 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I still put myself through school. I worked at Hickory Farms, and I can't remember the other place I worked, but there was a third place. I'm just trying to remember what it was. Canadian Tire or something.
If you weren't like kind of doing like drugs, why did you keep doing it? Like if it wasn't like...
Why did I keep doing it? Okay. So I would be physically assaulted so bad if I didn't. Or he would threaten my daughter, my family. He would threaten to...
Like with, I'm assuming with like death.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes he would sit on me and break my fingers and toes. I have burn marks. I'm branded on my lower pelvic region. He broke my ribs, like most of them, on both sides. There'd be times where I was so unrecognizable I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. The assaults were just so horrific. And
he would assault you multiple times, I would imagine. Like
over the course of the 2 years, because growing up, that wasn't my life. Growing up, I lived this very amazing, privileged life. Mm-hmm. And physical abuse was not part of it. Mm-hmm. With him, if I didn't do something, the assaults would be so horrific.
What made you think that you couldn't go to like authorities?
So with him, and I highly doubt it's true, but I can't say 100%, but I highly doubt it's true. I was always told that there were police working with them.
You don't think that was true?
I don't think that's true at all.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I think that's true. Personally.
I would never say yay or nay.
I guess that's a hard accusation too, right? But
yeah. But I do know that there's crappy people in amazing professions all the time. So I think it would be very naive of me to not say, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be very, very naive of me to say, yeah, sometimes crappy people get into really good jobs just so they can be even crappier people.
Yes.
So would the same not be true for police officers? Yes. But do I want to believe that? No, I don't. Mm-hmm. But at the time, did I want to test the theory? Absolutely not. No, I wasn't dipping my toe in that puddle.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other reason is once I had done it, he really brainwashed me. Like, do you think that you're going to get off scot-free? Look at all the drugs you've moved. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, just like, I'm in too deep. Yeah. Yeah. And the fear of just so many different things. Like, am I going to be charged? Am I going to lose my daughter? Like, I'm dealing with my parents' farm being the target at this point. Like, there was just so many things. Like, how do you...
Sorry, was your daughter living with you at this time too?
Yeah.
So you must have been like trying really hard to make sure she's not seeing this, right?
Yeah.
Or am I wrong?
So, no, yeah. So she was there for... the other part is there is quite a bit of sexual assault that occurred during this relationship. Mm-hmm. Sexual abuse, sexual assault. And my daughter, unfortunately, I thought I hid it a lot better and I didn't. Mm-hmm. So she's doing okay now, but there was some lingering effects from that for her because she was around before. She did hear and see some things she shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I did try and keep her at my parents' house, which is where the lying came in. So they all thought I had this like huge addiction or whatever they thought. I'm making an assumption, but I'm assuming that's what they thought. Because I would take her there and I'd say, I just need to watch her overnight. And I just wouldn't show up for a couple days. But I didn't show up for a couple days because I had just had like the shit kicked out of me, like pardon my French, but there it is. And I didn't want to go, and I didn't want her to see me that way. And I didn't want my family to ask questions that I couldn't really give an answer to. Yeah.
Did your family to take it upon themselves? Like, if she's not going to do it, like, I'm like.
My parents didn't know until I came out with the podcast with Engage 416.
Oh, really?
How bad it was. They all thought that I had just had this addiction that I had kicked. Nobody ever really knew. And that I was in an abusive relationship. They didn't really understand how detailed it actually was, that I was involved in a gang. And
So, how did you get out of that situation?
Okay, so this part is where I kind of graze over a certain thing, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
Okay, so growing up, I grew up with my best friend at my house every weekend. His grandfather was the founder of a very prominent national gang, international gang. And I ended up going to my friend for help. And when I went to him, I ended up moving in with a family members of this other gang.
Yeah.
And that's how I got out.
A rival gang?
And I became I don't want to sound cocky because I'm not. I'm very humbled. But I became almost untouchable because I just wasn't worth it for the chaos that would ensue if they started with this other very prominent gang.
Can you tell me off air what gang it is?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I won't tell you guys.
Yeah.
So
that
I know we have to dance around it, but how did that ensue that they got you out?
I'm going to say the reason I kind of graze over this is because it's not a feasible option for really anybody. Because usually what happens is if you're being trafficked, you're a piece of property. If you are to go to somebody else, usually you're sold to somebody else. That wasn't my case.
It's an exchange almost.
Because of my very dear friendship with a very high up member, I actually got like a pass, this freebie, so that I could get out and I could heal. And I had like 6 months of living in this house. It wasn't like what people thought. It was like a home. There was kids in the house. There was no drugs. There was no guns. There was nothing like that. But I got to stay there with my daughter, and we got to have that as our safe place to go. So if I was out and I was being followed by the gang I was leaving, I could go and find one of these members at various locations, and I would be safe. Because the two gangs, I was just not worth it to start the fight over. And that's how I ended up getting out.
Okay, so...
Sorry.
No.
I know it's kind of hard to...
No, it's okay, it's okay. I like overcoming obstacles. It's okay. So, did they just... Like, you must have... Like, they must have planned, like, okay, in a week, we're going to do this for you to, like, shift out. There must have been a pre...
So, the question I always get is, why didn't you just leave? Right? Yeah, like, why don't you just leave?
You feel safer going to, like, the other gang than...
Yeah, because the other problem is just because I got to get away from him.
Yeah.
I now know all these other people who are very aware of who I am and know that I'm working for them and know that I know too much information.
Yeah.
So just because I get rid of him, there's like how many other thousands of them?
So how did the other gang kind of like...
Yeah, so what was the game plan? Like the conversations, how did it start for you to be like, okay, I need to get out?
I didn't know what I was going to do. Honestly, I had no idea. So when I was leaving, I mean, my parents thought I was in an abusive relationship. They were like, just come home. I'm not coming home because then you guys will be even more
Mm-hmm.
like pushing people away became this like gift I had because I didn't want people around. They became a liability. So I can't just go to a friend's house. I can't just go.
So for this rival gang to do that, they must have like went the whole 9 yards. Like they're protecting your parents' house, like the whole like.
No, not necessarily, because it was me, right? Like without me, there's no access to that farm. Without me, there's no access to different things that I could offer. Without me, there's no like you're not using my car. You're not using this. Without me, you can't do these certain things. So when I was out, it kind of became like I was untouchable, and the things around me became untouchable. Like you can't. You're not just going up to her. You're not just going up to the farm. Like and I'm sure there was discussions I wasn't present for, or I'm sure there was thought processes that I'll never know about why they didn't just go up to my parents' farm. I'll never be able to give you a straight answer to that because I don't know. But I'm assuming that when I got myself out that way, I just made everything kind of untouchable because it no longer became worth it. It would cause too many problems.
It meant a lot to this person for them to do that, like in that gang.
Yeah.
So
he was a childhood friend. And also,
is this gang different from like other kind of like gangs like that? Like they have like, I don't know. I want to give like a round of applause. Like they like, I don't know.
No, you don't. They're not good. They're not good people. That's why. So that's
the other gang too?
Yeah. So that's why I graze over it. Is because when I say you jump from one fire into the other, I graze over it because my opportunity to get out is not everybody else's. Usually, when you ask for a favor, that's reciprocity. You owe something. And because of my lifelong friendship with this one person, I would never do it again. I would never say, hey, you did it for me once, you want to do it again? No, because I think then I would owe. They did me one very amazing favor to give me this second chance because of my relationship with him.
So, so this conversation with this guy, what did he say? Like, hey, Rhea, like, I think I can help you. How did this conversation start?
So it took me about 6 months. It wasn't a quick process, and I wasn't comfortable enough to I had a lot of trust issues at that point. Like, how is this? Like, I can't just say, like, if the day I went.
He did it for you. Like, being like old friends, like.
Yeah, there's a lot of history there that I don't. There's a lot of history there, like family that I helped him out with in high school and his sister and stuff. So that's kind of
how it started. So sorry. So back to it. So how did that conversation start with?
So I couldn't think of any other way I was going to be able to get out. And so initially I think I just went to him to see like ideas. I hadn't seen him in years. Not years, but it had been quite a while because I had just sort of pushed everyone away. So when I started talking to him again, I would go and see him, and I was just like, hey, I was super skittish. I had lost a ton of weight. And see, a lot of the times I was pretty roughed up. And usually I would try and hide it with makeup and stuff, but you can always tell like swollen and disheveled and stuff like that. So initially when I went to him, I didn't expect him to do anything. I just wanted to know what I could do. Like, is there anything? Do you have any ideas? Like, I'm at a loss here. I'm scared. I can't go to the police. They're not gonna be able to help me. Like, yeah. And that's how the conversation started. And from there, just kind of progressed until the plan came that I would just move into one of the houses with them. And that's sort of how it happened. But it wasn't, and like it wouldn't have happened if he had said, okay, just move in with me today. I never would have done it. I would have ran and I never would have spoken to him again because I needed to be ready. I needed to make sure that I was comfortable leaving. And as stupid as that sounds, because you're like, you have an out, why don't you just take it? Nobody can guarantee my safety. There's parts of the story that I would never be able to tell people due to shame or whatever it is. So until I was good and ready, I wasn't leaving. So it took a while.
Was this like was this like okay, Tuesday night, we're gonna come, you're gonna leave at 3 a.m. Was it that kind of situation, like just at a random night?
Okay, so
whatever you're
like
able to say.
Yeah, no. It was it was just after the last time he had assaulted me. And the last time he assaulted me, he picked me up by my throat. And it was a basement floor with like that really like thin tile on it. So he picked me up by my throat and he dropped me backwards onto the back of my head and knocked me out unconscious. I was out cold. I don't know how long I was out cold for. And when I came to, he was leaning over me and he was like, "Thank God, I thought I'd kill you and I didn't know what I'd tell the police." He wasn't worried that he'd killed me. He was worried about what he was going to tell police. Yeah. And from there, I realized like, I don't know why it clicked that time, but that specific time, I realized that he is actually going to kill me.
Yeah, that's an option. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Did anything happen to him?
We'll get there. We'll get there. I'm
Like,
the storyteller
what
here.
happened?
Okay, so at that point, you're like, okay, we need to get this done where I need to leave with my daughter. So
so I had been talking to him for a couple months, and then when that happened, I was like, something's got to give. Like he is going to kill me, and that's when it became a more serious discussion about like, how are we going to do this? And I don't know what happened in the background because I wasn't privy to those conversations. All I know is that this was the plan that was given to me. This is the option we have for you. Take it or leave it. We can't really do a lot else for you. We can't just say.
Can I ask what that plan was or no?
Yeah, it was just to move in and just like stay with us,
for
heal,
a month.
do like I lived with them for a while.
But if the Logue game asked where you were, they're like, "Oh, she's with us now," like that sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
was it a known thing? It's like she's with them,
Yeah.
and we can't do anything about it.
Is this guy who
Yeah?
helped you, like your childhood friend? Is he a good cat? Like
Pardon?
the guy who like helped? Is he a good cat? Like
Well,
a
he's
good guy. Like
he's with a gang,
I don't
so
know, like I've seen way too many movies. I just
it's not like the Sons of Anarchy where like, there's a sexy Jax Teller.
I think so. No, they were good to me.
just to
You were very. It seems like you were very blessed with that situation.
I was. It was something that I don't take for granted, and I don't. Yeah, I'm very thankful for that because I don't think I would be here. Actually, I know I wouldn't be here without it.
Okay, so you're in that house. You're healing. That first night of you staying in that house, like, you must have been overcame with emotion that like I'm safe, or did it feel real?
That didn't come for a while. I don't think.
I'll be on edge for a while. Like,
Yeah, like because I was there doesn't mean I know it's gonna work.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And you don't know maybe if they're gonna go back on their deal, right?
And it's not like I moved in with my friend. I moved in with different people because that was the option I was given. And yeah, and they were wonderful to me. Like, it was a family home. It wasn't anything like you would suspect.
does
But
this game kind of have like it sounds like a Ronald McDonald like.
no,
I don't think there's any Ronald McDonald gang.
But it's how everybody has this idea that these guys like have these like just dingy homes. But I'll tell you right now,
Fucking nice home.
oh,
I work
some of
for
these
this bank,
houses, some of these houses are
I
like,
think they're good people. It's a good gang. I don't know.
this is a good guy. This is a good guy.
Yeah, he's just it's okay.
No, I like it. But
No.
no,
You're like, but no.
I wouldn't. No, they were good to me because of my history, but they aren't good people. And that kind of, it's hard to say that because of
that's
because they've done so much for you.
But I never want anybody listening to this podcast to be like, oh, I know what I can do to get out. No, you can't. Don't do it. Like, it's not going to work for you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that for free. It will not work for you.
So when was that moment where you felt like you could take a breath?
It was probably a couple months in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, do you remember where you were? Do you remember like?
I just remember that Rihanna and I were laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think
Do you
she
remember
actually
why you were
got-
laughing?
Yeah, I think she got... So they had these like this vent in the house, and she got, for some reason, she was like trying to get into my room,
Mm-hmm.
and she tried to crawl through the vent. I know it's like the stupidest thing, and like I probably should, like I never should have probably been a mom, let alone at 18, but we survived and she's fine. But I think she had been trying to crawl through this vent, and then I just heard her, and there was like this little echoey, like
a laugh, like an innocent kind of like a
yeah, because
laugh.
it's not like she was small, and I was like,
What are you doing? You're
where's
like,
my kid? And then I just see her in a vent, and I'm like, holy shit! But I remember laughing.
Mm-hmm.
For like once we got her out, obviously, but I had her greased up like a slicked pig, I think, trying to just like haul her
Oh my gosh.
But she
Why'd you choose the name Rihanna?
Rihanna,
Oh, Rihanna.
her father actually has an older daughter who's 9 years older than her, and to make her a part of the process, she named her. So I'm assuming it had something to do with the Rihanna era when Rihanna first came out, but
Yeah,
I'm speculating.
I love how you call it the era, the Rihanna era,
The
like
Rihanna
a dynasty
era.
or something.
Like, well, she came
I
out and she
love
was
it.
like the umbrella thing.
Yeah. Jeez. Okay. So, that's the first time you like really took a breath and everything like that. So, without sounding a little bit lame or anything like that, when did like the healing process begin? Like, when did you like, I'm gonna, like after that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, did you decide to go back to school? Like, when did, after you, because I'm sure they're like, okay, you've been in the house for a bit, you're safe, our word.
I
But-
moved back to my parents' house.
Okay, and then that's when you told your parents?
No.
Or no, because you told the podcast.
No, I moved back into my parents' house and I got a job. Actually, I got a job working nights,
Mm-hmm. Doing what?
making paint.
Okay. Making paint. You know what? That's okay. That's a lot better than
Yeah.
before.
Where do you make paint at night?
DuPont.
Oh,
It's not DuPont anymore. I can't remember the name of it, but it was DuPont back.
Benjamin Moore's.
Yeah. It was like this massive paint plant in Ajax. It was like this massive.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're doing that at night.
Yeah. So, and I would work some nights. So I ended up moving back in with my parents because freaking childcare, man. It's like,
It's a lot.
woo!
Yeah.
No, I couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
So I moved in with my parents. And that's kind of when it really started.
Okay.
Unfortunately, had I probably come forward to my parents then, our relationship probably would have been fixed a lot sooner than it actually was. Because for me, I was like, I get this second chance.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing all this stuff to really earn that second chance.
Mm-hmm.
But for my parents, I had put them through so much and they didn't really have an understanding. They just thought I was either like an addict in an abusive relationship. Like they had no idea the backstory and like what I was doing or why I was pushing them away or that I had nearly lost their farm. You know, all the
Yeah,
things.
just little
that
When
things.
your parents like kind of finally find out, were they kind of really shocked, or were they kind of
Devastated.
they,
So hurt.
that taken off guard? Like they,
Just so.
I would imagine too, because I mean, with the first instance, they already have so much guilt, so much, you know, as a parent, and then this, they probably, I mean, there's no way that they don't feel like what did we do wrong? Like not in a
Yeah.
sense towards something
No,
you,
absolutely.
but in the sense of like, you know,
Yeah,
protecting.
Yeah, and I know that hurts them, but again, if you remember, I said I was like one of the worst kids because it didn't matter what anybody told me. I was always going to do what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they had tried to help me, I wouldn't have let them.
Mm-hmm.
I manipulated them into doing things for me that helped me, like watching Brianna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I did things like that would help my situation. And so even though they may not ever agree that they did enough for me at the time, or what I would have allowed them to do anyways.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so sorry. So to go back, you were working at DuPont.
DuPont.
Sorry. And so, so what it like after that, things started building. You started feeling like, okay, I'm working, I'm doing something legit now, and I'm gonna get a place. Like, what progressed after that?
So then I moved. I originally moved out west
Mm-hmm.
because as much as I love my parents and being on the farm, I was never going to be able to get a job that I could move off the farm as a single parent and be able to provide my daughter with the life that I wanted her to have. And I'm never 1000% comfortable here. As much as I got out and I can talk about it, I'm never going to say 1000% that I wouldn't get shot in a back alley if he ever got up to me, because I think I wounded his pride a little bit.
Okay. And so when did you start like building your life a little bit more and more? Like, when did you start feeling like, okay, I think we're safe, I think we're okay?
I moved to Northern Ontario and I started working for a construction company, and it was the first really decent job I had ever had. Making paint was good and it paid well, but it wasn't like something you want. Nobody, you know, is sitting there in JK and everyone's like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And you're like, I want to make paint. Nobody says that. So like I started working in health and safety for this construction company, and from there I ended up volunteering. When I started volunteering, I volunteered for victim services, and I volunteered for a volunteer fire department. And when I started volunteering for victim services, I'd actually learned the terms for what had happened to me, because up until that point, I had no idea.
And when you say terms, you mean like grooming and traffic?
I had no idea. Like I just knew what had happened. I had no idea that there was so much that I wasn't the only one this happens to. It actually happens frequently to so many people, and there's like campaigns to stop it from happening. Like, so when I started working for victim services, I started volunteering for them. I started building my life, and I started building confidence because I could understand what had happened to me. Up until then, I just had a lot of baggage that I carried around with me and sort of tucked it into my back pocket and was like, I don't have time for you today. Like, shut up back there, and carried on. Yeah. But when I started working for victim services, I found my outlet was actually helping others and helping them get through their. Oh, thanks. That was how I ended up starting to build my own confidence again in how I felt about myself, how I felt about my parenting skills, how I felt like I was doing in life. And then from there, I just started growing and growing.
And building and building.
Were you ever hesitant to like let people in? Like if like someone like started like you move up to Thunder Base or talk with random.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah. There's still people I'll be like.
So to add to that a little bit, and hopefully this is okay to say, but like you must have been incredibly like cautious for dating.
Christy's probably dying laughing.
Right? Or no?
That's literally what I meant to ask.
I thought you literally just face palmed your own head. I thought you were like.
So okay, we definitely have to.
No. I don't date very often. It doesn't happen very often. I have no idea what happens. I'm just like, yeah. But no, I haven't picked very wonderful people. Every time I would say they get a little bit better.
Why?
They get a little bit better?
Yeah.
Well, the next guy I dated, he had a driver's license and wasn't a drug dealer, so that was super cool.
It's all about the little things in life.
Yeah.
But and I can't really say too much bad about him other than it just wasn't going to work out because our parenting styles were so different. And I am a bit of a workaholic. And I usually have several jobs at one time and a few volunteer organizations on the go. And that is really hard to find somebody that wants that in a partner because I'm just so...
You're busy.
Yeah.
You're on the go. And then especially, I mean, I would imagine that you're pretty hesitant of explaining your history.
Yeah. So the reason I actually came out was the person I was with at the time. So I had applied to Ontario Provincial Police. And during their job interview process, which is the longest thing I've ever seen, really amazing for weeding out people. I'll give that to them. But when I had applied, they had asked if I had any affiliations, and I said no, because at the time I didn't. To me, I wasn't lying. I was just like, whatever. This is a part in my life that I had gone through. Blah blah blah. Off I go. So I started seeing a guy while I was in this process, and it's about a 9-month process. I get to the end of the 9 months, and I believe I'm getting a job offer. And the guy I was seeing was a police officer, and he said, "Oh, you're a shoo-in." He phoned me one day. He's like, "Oh, you're a shoo-in. There's 4 candidates or something. They're hiring 2. And one of them they're letting go because she has massive traffic violations, and the other one they're letting go because she's affiliated." So I was like, oh, okay, we need to have a discussion. So I went to his house and told him, kind of not as in-depth as I am now,
yes,
because I had never actually talked about what had happened to me. Certain friends kind of knew, but I'd never really come out with what had happened. So I kind of gave him like the Coles Notes, super cheap version of what had happened. And after that, he started collecting ladies because I was an embarrassment.
Collecting ladies is an interesting way of calling somebody a cheater, but okay.
Yeah, so he started seeing many women behind my back because, and at the end, he said it was because he was embarrassed of me because of not being able to get a job with OPP. And yeah, so then I was like, wow.
You're kind of a piece of shit, but whatever.
I have to say, like, I understand. I guess if you've never had to live that life, and you've never had to, your whole life, somebody's been able to take you aside and give you a hug and be like, "Hey, it's a bad day, buddy, but tomorrow's going to be okay. Go get him, cowboy." And you've never actually had to sit there and have somebody just wallop the crap out of you. He would never be able to be in my shoes and understand why I did some of the things I did. And so
he tries to make you feel bad about it by doing piece of shit things.
Yeah. But I when that happened, and then when that happened, I was like, I can't hide this anymore. Because he ended up breaking up with me because of it, essentially. And I knew then that I needed to start doing something. And when I was doing my work with victim services, I was helping. And so I ended up talking to Jason, who is a huge part of Engage 416, and starting that program. And I told him, he actually came up north to go hunting one time. And I told him, I'm like, we were sitting in a parking lot in Superstore. I'm like, well, just so you know, if you ever wanted me on the podcast, I would probably do it because this is like what I've been through. And he was like, holy shit.
You said that in a parking lot? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Just like.
And that was actually the first time that I had ever really 100% come out and just been like, this is what happened to me. And I didn't tell him the whole story, but he was like, I got to get you on, and I got to get you talking to Sean. And that's how I met Sean. And then, yeah. But because of him, I have to thank my ex, because I don't know if I would ever have had the courage to come out and start talking about it, and start trying to help people the way that I can doing this without him.
So
she's like,
no,
we're not giving him any credit.
So, I mean, you were explaining to me the story and your life and stuff like that, and you're very smiley and you're very sweet and you're very like humorous about it. Have you always been like this, or is this like, for me, like, you know, I when something's happening in my life, I like to joke around about it, and I kind of quote unquote laugh at my pain. right? Is this a way that you coped with everything, or you just kind of started doing this later on?
So no, I haven't. It hasn't always been this way. Yeah, I've always presented outwardly as a super happy person. It isn't that way all the time. It is that way most of the time. But I still have my really crap weeks where I'm just sad and hurt and angry and trying to navigate those feelings. And
even to this day, or
yeah, I don't think they'll ever go away. But for the most part, I try and find the good. I try and be bubbly. I try and pick the people up around me, because as bad as today is,
as you laugh,
it's not those days.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to be thankful for. And that's what I have to smile for today, is that as crappy as today could be, it's never going to be that day again. And that's the reminder that I give myself. And I want people around me to be happy. I want people around me to realize, like, yeah, today might be shit, but guess what? It's not as bad as it could be. We still have something to smile about, so let's find it. Yeah. But I do laugh a lot.
That's good.
Ridiculously. That's a lot. Yeah.
So besides obviously being an enormous amount of help and volunteering, what do you like to do for fun in general?
I work a lot.
Other than working a lot.
I go to the gym a lot. You can't tell because I've been eating a lot of food lately. I want to preface this with eating a lot of food. Okay. But you wouldn't know it. I'm like one of those really, like, I'm a chubby raccoon, okay? You know when you don't expect them to be able to break into your fridge, but all of a sudden they're just like robbing you blind of all your food in your fridge? Okay, I'm that person. You would not be able to tell that I can actually leg press 550 pounds.
Oh, good for you.
Right? Like, he's like, we're doing this right now. We are doing this right now. So
that would be like an outlet for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I love the gym. Music is where I go. I listen to all kinds of music, and I just, poor Christy on the way here, she was like, so this is what we're doing right now, because I have a system in my car, and I just rock out and I sing.
What kind of music do you like?
Everything.
What were you just listening to? Rihanna?
Who was that? No.
We listen to
country pop, some heavy
a little
metal.
Morgan Wallen, a little.
Let the Chaos Rain was what we were listening to into the parking lot. Yeah, everything, and even like Riverdance, because that's what I.
And we're done with this show right now.
That's what I rode to, like that when I was doing dressage. So that's what I like. I'll revert back to Lord of the Dance or something on my like weird days. Christy doesn't have to deal with that, so she's so happy about that. But yeah.
Okay, so you like a little music? Do you watch any shows like
Golden Girls?
Golden Girls.
He's like, wait.
Whoa.
Yeah, I could probably act out every Golden Girls episode ever made, because I've been watching them since high school, and now they're just ingrained in me. I love them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And reading.
What do you like to read?
I like to read romance novels.
Nothing wrong with that. What are you reading right now? You don't want to say?
I can't remember. It's a series, and it's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey, but it's not 50 Shades of Grey.
Twilight?
No. But Edward would never do that.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's okay. So you like to read, you like to listen to music, you like working out. Oh, good, the outlets. And do you see it as an outlet yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I know that if I don't go to the gym, I turn into not a friendly human being sometimes.
Yeah, I'm the exact same.
Not like, I never try to be nasty, but you can definitely tell that I haven't been to a gym. You just go work that off.
So are you a little bit more agitated? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've actually been diagnosed with complex PTSD, and I have anger management issues, which you'd never be able to tell.
You know what though? Sometimes it's funny because I'm a very agitated, angry person myself.
Yeah.
But nobody thinks it because I'm like I try to be so nice. I try to be so sweet, and I grew up with like a pretty like emotionally and abusive father.
Yeah.
So and he was a very angry person. So like I want to be the exact opposite of that. So I'm always like, hey, yeah, blah blah blah, yeah, sweating like Shaq at the foul line. You know, always like like making jokes, but internally I'm just like, what are you doing?
Yes, thank
But like
you.
I never want to be like that because I'm no, woosah, like we're good,
Yes,
you know.
yes.
So I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I totally respect that too.
Yeah. So you can definitely tell when I haven't been in the gym or if I'm not doing something for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it's important for you, especially now for you to do things for yourself.
Yeah.
So is there anything that somebody should watch out for? Like since you're you've been through so much and you're quite the strong woman, like a person like looking back, like a person who's going to a party or a person who is, maybe has an abusive relationship that maybe they don't know. Like, is there anything you could give advice and be like, hey, you need to watch out for these signs?
So everybody has that gut instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And follow it. Don't ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
At least humor it and investigate, because your instincts are rarely wrong. And I know from personal experience, even recently, my gut instincts were screaming like, nah, I don't think this is right for you. And I was like, but I just want this so bad that I ignored them for a little bit. And it doesn't work out. It's never going to work out. The other thing is, if you have to change for somebody, if you have to be somebody else, if you feel like you can't be 150% who you are, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime somebody is trying to take you away from your friends and family, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime somebody says or makes you feel like you're not good enough, that's a problem. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I
Yeah.
like that. Do you ever do you know or do you understand how much of a beautiful, strong person you are? Because do you understand that?
Thank you.
You're laughing, you're sweet, you're joking around, but all I see in you is resilience. All I see
Thank you.
is we talk about the get alpha mindset, but I see an alpha looking at you. I see a person
Thank you.
who is so resilient, so strong, emotionally, physically. Yeah, it's a bit of a cop out, but everybody says I can't imagine what you've been through. But I can't imagine what you've been through, right? And you're looking at me and we're joking around, and I'm sure you have bad nights, and I'm sure you have maybe night terrors and stuff like that. But you right now, with everything you said and the way you've talked and the way you persevered, you are very much the embodiment of an alpha.
Thank you.
And so, do you ever give yourself a pat on the back and be like, I'm kind of an amazing person? Because you should.
No, I do. I am working towards it. It's a struggle. Every day is a bit of a struggle. I want to get there one day, and that's the next piece. I stopped focusing on me and I started focusing on others, because that's where I was finding I was healing. And I was finding the power to be able to move on and build confidence in myself. And I needed to do something. I needed to do something to show people that just because where you're at today is not going to be where you were at tomorrow. So I went out and I worked my friggin' ass off, because as you can imagine, my credit was shit after all of this happened.
I didn't even think about your credit, girl. I'm not going to lie.
I'm going to tell you, if you're in this situation.
Sure. We're going to take a 1-second break because the battery's about to die.
A few moments later.
To finish us off, any resources that people can look for if they feel like they're in a relationship, abusive one, or anything they can look for help?
Yeah, so I would engage 416.ca will tell you everything you need to know about that program and what they can do for you. It's not just prevention. They do have resources to help and assist getting out of the gang life and human trafficking situations. Victim services. So if you Google victim services, the closest one to you will pop up. And they have not only the financial, but the professional resources to assist in extrication of various crimes.
And those are the main ones you would say that Okay.
Those are my favorites.
Okay, we'll make sure we link them
Yeah.
down below. But I appreciate you coming on. Okay,
Thank you
you
so
are
much.
amazing. Guys,
you.
if you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, please like. If you guys are listening on Spotify, please share. But other than that, we love you guys and out.
Thank you.